Welcome back to the Show My Scars podcast. I am your host, Derek Duker. Today's guest is Matthew Blystone. He is the owner of the Theta Wellness Center here in Springfield, Missouri, over on 1339 East Montclair Street. He's going to talk a little bit about the services they have available over at Theta Wellness Center that could help out with your mental health. He's also going to talk about some of the things that he's had to face in life and what he has found has helped him. He's lost a couple of family members who were close to him, and I know that that's something that we all eventually have to go through, and some of us have a hard time getting through those times in life. Before I play my conversation with Matt, there's something that I want to make sure that everybody understands. I started this podcast because I enjoy talking to my guests about the things that they've encountered and the things that they've learned through their mental health journey. I feel as though I have so much to learn in the world of mental health, and these ladies and gentlemen are just a little further down the road than I am. I don't want you at all to feel like I'm talking down to you or my guests are talking down to you or that we have it all figured out, because we certainly don't. My hope is that this podcast serves as an entry point for you on your mental health journey, or maybe a little bit of encouragement along the way. So just wanted to make sure everybody is on the same track that I am with this, and without further ado, here is my conversation with Matthew Blystone. Again, I appreciate you doing this and making time for me.
No worries.
Why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners who you are, a little bit about yourself, and about Theta.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Matthew Blystone. I am a Springfield native. I, grew up in a pretty middle class, like American dream household. Everything was provided for me. My parents are still together, which is fairly rare. I grew up with two brothers and played a lot of sports when I was younger, up until about the point I got to high school. And then I stopped playing sports and started partying more, started experimenting with different things. And that kind of led me down a path of just always being curious about consciousness and spirituality. And so, in my early 20s, all the way up through my late 20s, I was still trying to figure out what the world was, why we're here, how to cope with all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I lived in Portland in 2011 or 12 was the year that I first floated. And that was also right after my first 10-day silent meditation. So at that point I was pretty versed in what's known as Vipassana meditation, which is meditation of observation. It's also known in the West as mindfulness meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So that, in conjunction with the floating experience, is, they're kind of hand in hand. The float tank will induce the theta brainwave, or the theta state, which is what you're in when you're in deep states of meditation or while you're dreaming. Deep states of meditation also induce that, obviously, so that's kind of, that's the skinny of it. As far as using floating for mental health, it was never about mental health for me necessarily, as much as it was about exploration. However, my teenage years were stricken with massive bouts of depression after losing my grandfather, and my brother went away to the military and stuff like that. And then, my older brother, he died in Iraq in 2008. And so that was another hard hit. And what those things did was, when my grandfather died, I was a teenager, so I didn't cope well. I had a lot of acting out and doing things that weren't healthy for me or anyone around me. But when my older brother died, I was 28, I think. And I had a lot more tools under my belt. I was versed in yoga and had meditated, a little bit, and not gone to a meditation retreat or anything like that. But, I had practiced various forms of meditation. So I was much more capable of coping with that loss. So in 2016, I started this wellness center. We just had floating in the beginning. And then 2 years later, I incorporated an infrared sauna and massage therapy. And then a couple years after that, I'd say maybe 3 years after that, I built a finished sauna, added a cold plunge last year. Now I'm putting in red light therapy. All these things have been shown to mitigate symptoms of depression and anxiety, and that's something that I feel is really common anymore. People are anxious. I feel like that's a healthy response to the world we live in, really, or maybe not necessarily a healthy response, but it's not surprising.
Right.
It's not surprising because there's not much security in the world these days. And so, yeah, that's about it as far as that goes. I could get more into the services if you want and how they work, but
yeah, we'll talk about that. I want to circle back a little bit to you talk about in the beginning, like floating and mindfulness was more about exploration than it was for mental health. Can you talk a little bit more about that and kind of what you mean by that?
Yeah. So I was always somebody who enjoyed partaking in like exogenous chemicals in order to achieve altered states, whether it be psychedelics or other things. But those can be healthy ways of exploration. But there's also a slippery slope there to where it's no longer about exploration and just, partying. And so there came a point in my life where I figured out that I had already opened that door and saw what was beyond. So the next step for me was just how do I achieve those states naturally with my own consciousness? Like how do I control my mental state enough to achieve some of these things I was achieving with the use of external devices? I had also really dove deep into Buddhism. I was raised Catholic, but whenever my grandfather died at the age of 13, I became pretty much atheist. Although I would not consider myself an atheist now. But because Christianity wasn't giving me any answers, I started looking at other things. And I found Buddhism and started doing more Buddhist type practices, more Eastern philosophical things. I started looking into those like Taoism and Buddhism and Zen Buddhism and stuff like that. And, I just felt like there was something there to discover.
Yeah.
So I put myself to it and started practicing,
Yeah, and I think when we talk about mindfulness and, it's not just a tool to kind of get rid of like the anxiety and depression. I find it interesting, that, there's several people out there who talk about, suffering is inevitable. And in my last episode, I was talking to somebody about when you have anxiety, it's your body's trying to tell you that something kind of needs to change. And then mindfulness can kind of be a tool to not get rid of, but investigate that anxiety and see what it is, because there's almost certainly not an answer to get rid of it, but an answer of, how to cope, or what it is that, deep down that you really want to seek out. Has that kind of been like your experience, and kind of, how a theta flow could potentially help there?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most interesting things about mindfulness meditation is it is strictly just observance.
Right.
And so you're not trying to avoid anything that you're feeling or crave anything that you want to feel. You're just simply observing what you're feeling, and as you're observing it, you practice equanimity, which is just kind of observation without any kind of labeling or attachment. So say you feel anxious, you're observing that anxiety, and you say, oh, that's a sensation I'm experiencing, but you're not adverse to it. You accept that it's there, and then you continue observing other things. So whenever you place less importance on it, your brain naturally will follow suit. It'll place less importance on it. And then instead of experiencing anxiety and having your sympathetic nervous system respond, and then all of a sudden you can't really think because you're getting this adrenaline response, you are calming yourself down. You're activating more of a parasympathetic response. So your heart rate will slow, all this stuff happens, your respiration slows. And it allows you to think more clearly about the situation. And that is whenever you can then determine, where's that coming from? Is that necessary? Like, do I have to cater to that right now? Or is it just something that I can let pass me by?
Yeah.
And so when you get in a float tank, inevitably everybody's first time is going to be one of their hardest. You may have harder floats down the line depending on what your situation is in life. But the first time you get in a float tank and there's no external stimulation, your brain doesn't know what to do with that, because our society is full of external stimulation. I mean, we're fed it, almost like bottle fed stimulation. And so you get in a float tank and it's quiet. After a few minutes, you no longer feel your body. You can't see anything. Your brain starts to say, okay, this is weird. Let's try to make something. You can start like having auditory or visual hallucinations. It's not super common, but it can happen depending on how active your mind is. And you can start to experience a little anxiety, The important thing is to become mindful of that anxiety. Say, oh, I'm feeling that. And then focus on something else. Observe something else that's going on, because there's literally the fears that people have in the float tanks are, I dare to say 99% of the time, they're not valid. You're not going to sink. There's no one in there going to get you. You're not going to drown. You're simply going to float on a bed of water for 60 or 90 minutes, and then it's going to be over. So the quicker you're able to, let go of those fears, let go of that anxiety, the quicker you're going to drift into this more dreamy state, which is really nice. It's It's really nice. And your mind craves it, even though it may not act like it does. Your body craves it. And I don't mean crave in the way where it's going to cause suffering, but I mean like it's completely 100% healthy and rejuvenating, for your mind and body. So the breath while you're in the tank is one of the most important things. If you start to experience that anxiety, like go back to focusing on the sensation of your breath, and pay attention to that. Your mind will, it'll start paying attention to that more than this anxiety or any fears you have. And so it's ultimately about who's driving. Are you driving or is your brain driving?
Yeah.
And if your brain's driving, are you able to take the wheel, or are you going to just let it keep driving? And some people just let it keep driving. They'll get out of the tank. But most people, they'll kind of push past it a little bit, and then they'll have a wonderful experience. They'll reach a state of relaxation that, most people are like, I've never been that relaxed in my entire life.
Yeah.
So, and if you have anxiety and you push through that, you feel better about yourself. You come out there and you say, well, man, I was nervous at first, but I did it and it was awesome. And now I know that I can like push past this discomfort a little bit and it'd be okay, so yeah, it can be pretty epic. People have changed a lot of bad habits from floating because they've reached a state where they've been able to observe those bad habits for what they are, and it's like a switch,
I bet it's similar to, I don't know if you've read the book by David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me.
Yeah.
He talks about like this cookie jar theory of you accomplish something and you kind of save that back in your memory, sort of, putting a cookie in the jar, and you're able to come back further down the line and remember, oh, I was able to overcome this. I can potentially overcome this obstacle that I'm facing now.
Yeah. That's a really powerful book. He's a very powerful figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
how did you come about deciding to open Theta here in Springfield?
Well, so I was going to school for molecular biology, and I was really stressed out. And I was like, man, I wish there was a float center here because I could use like some of that, and then I started thinking about it and I was like, honestly, like I bet a lot of people could use some of that, and started, me and one of my buddies, my buddy was looking at starting a business and I was like, dude, you should start a float center. And he's like, well, I've never done it, so we should start a float center. And I was like, okay, yeah, I've never owned a business, but let's go for it, And we did. And, it's been almost 8 years. So, it's proven that people definitely could use it, So we have a lot of people that have been coming for, almost the entire 7 years. It's made tremendous improvements in a lot of people's lives, which is great. It feels good to be able to provide therapies for the community that they could really utilize, and it really helps them. And and I think the healthier every individual is, it just kind of adds up to the healthier the community is.
Absolutely.
So.
How did you take that jump? Were you scared at all when he floated that idea? Pun not intended, but.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was pretty nervous. At the same time, I was just like, man, if I can make A's on molecular biology tests, like I can probably figure out how to run a business.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like those tests were so hard. It was the cookie in the jar.
Yeah.
It was just those things I was overcoming, and I was like, okay, I'm capable of this. I'm going to school, taking classes with people who are trying to be doctors. That was never my goal, But the fact that I was like, keeping up with future doctors it gave me a lot of confidence that I could, figure out what I needed to figure out.
What were you studying that for?
I'm really into human optimization. Like, what are things that we can do to make us think better, be more physically fit and healthy, sleep better, live longer, age slower, be kinder, all those things. So I was really fascinated with genetics and epigenetics, and just the idea that there's a whole code inside of us that switches flip on and off and create different scenarios. And, ultimately I want to be able to live very long and very healthy. And I know most people do.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's an exciting field. I kind of wish I've tried to go back and finish that degree a couple times, but every time I do, this business either like experiences a boom and I'm like, okay, well, I got to think about the next step of growth, or like I'll lose an employee or something and have to step back in. Yeah. So it keeps calling me back. So I've let go of that and just focus strictly on the health and wellness aspect of society and the community instead of going and doing the research and stuff like that. So.
This episode of the Show My Scars podcast is brought to you by Two Oddballs Creative. Two Oddballs uses marketing, PR, and design principles, techniques, and technology to help businesses meet their ultimate goals and thrive. They believe in treating clients' businesses with the same care and attention to detail as they would their own. I can attest to this because the Oddballs created the logo for my podcast. The Oddballs are oddly skilled. In an age where the words expert and experience have lost their impact, who can you trust? The ones who can prove it. Sure, they can brag on their years of experience too, but just because you've done something for a long time doesn't mean you've done it well. So head to their website and take a look for yourself. They've even got their roster up there so you can see what they bring to the table, and they have links to their work. That is Two Oddballs Creative. Find them at twooddballs.com. What are some tips for people to have a more successful first foray into a float?
So, I would highly recommend learning how to do some calming breath work, just simple, sitting there and focusing on the sensation of your breath as it goes in and out of your nostrils, and slow it down, Also, I wouldn't recommend drinking caffeine before you come in, Don't have any expectations. A lot of people have come in thinking that they're going to see some things like Joe Rogan has or something like that. I'm like, well, there's no telling what he was taking while he was in the float tank, So it's funny because you'll have some, farmers come in with their wives and they don't even know what they're doing here. They're like, I guess I'm going to do this float thing or something, and they almost always have the best time because they have no clue what they're going to be doing, so there's no expectation. And then they get in there and, of course, they probably work very hard all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're actually getting some relaxation, and they always come out and they're just like, oh man, I don't know what that was, but that was awesome. It's just like, it's self-care. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'd say no caffeine. Try to leave your phone off while you're in here in the lobby. A lot of people will get in here and they'll sit on the couch and they'll just start scrolling, and that's you're keeping your mind in this state of external input. So I'd recommend, getting here 5 or 10 minutes early and just sitting on the couch, taking some long, deep breaths, it's pretty easy to have a successful float. Hitting the sauna beforehand, if you're really tense, will help a lot because the sauna will loosen you up. But yeah, I'd say those are the most important aspects. No caffeine, practice some breath work, and stay off your phone while you're here.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, and I guess it might be a little bit helpful to kind of explain what all goes into the float. I know it's Epsom salts and things like that, but because when I was researching, about floats and stuff like that, the first thing that a lot of people might think is, it might be deep water, whatever. Kind of just go through like the physics of
Sure.
float.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's about 150 pounds of water or 150 gallons of water in there. So that's mixed with about 1,000 to 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt. So it creates a specific gravity that it's basically more dense than the human body. So you pop to the surface and you float the entire time. It's only about 10 inches deep. So even if you were to sink, which would never happen, you're just, you'll hit the ground before you'd have any worries of going under,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, each of the tanks are around 9 foot long or 5 feet wide. So even the tallest of us can fit in there without touching the sides. And it's filtered. The water is filtered in between each client for about 15 minutes, which is roughly about 3 cycles. So all the water gets cycled about 3 times through there. And there's a micron filter that filters out any particulates up to or down to the size of a skin cell. So very, very small. There's also an ultraviolet filter on there that helps to break apart the hydrogen peroxide that we pour in at the end of the night. It creates like an ozone, which is very sanitizing. It cleanses the salt itself. The fact that that water is twice as salty as the Dead Sea. Nothing lives in the Dead Sea except for halophiles. Halophiles only live in very salty places like the Dead Sea. So any bacteria or fungus or anything like that, if it did get into the float tanks, it's dead immediately because it's a very hypertonic solution. But yeah, you float nude, or we highly recommend that. If people want to wear a swimsuit, they can. It's going to create extra sensation. And swimsuits are actually carry more bacteria and mold spores and stuff like that than the human body does. So we prefer people to, go in their birthday suit. It's better. You shower off before you get in anyway. And then, when you get out, you rinse all the salt off. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The water itself is kept at 94 degrees. So that's about the average temperature of the surface of your skin. And what that does is it creates, after like 10 minutes, you'll reach this equilibrium where the water and your skin temperature kind of adjust to become about the same. And at that point, you can't tell where your body ends and the water begins. So you kind of feel like pure consciousness floating in this void. We do play music for the first 10 minutes. We fade that out, kind of just as like a little buffer.
Mm-hmm.
So people aren't just going immediately into silence. If people request it, we'll leave the music on the whole time. We also have a way to leave a light on in there as well. So yeah, it's pretty adaptable. One of our tanks is actually a pool, so it's not even enclosed. So people who are really claustrophobic, they would never get in the cabin or the float tanks. So we built the pool, and now anybody can do it. Even the most claustrophobic people don't have a problem. Yeah, I think that's about it on those.
Other than the mental aspects that we discussed, how else does it help? I've seen where it says, it can help lower blood pressure and muscle aches and things like that.
Yeah. So the fact that it is so calming will help to lower blood pressure. It's still up in the air how much Epsom salt actually helps with that, because to my knowledge, there hasn't been enough scientific literature to show that magnesium is being absorbed while floating, although you definitely feel like it does. The lack of fighting gravity, however, because you are floating, and so there will be times where you're floating and not moving, and you'll have like your hip pop or shoulder pop or something, and it's because your muscles are getting so relaxed that it's allowing your skeletal structure to kind of shift around a bit. So just the fact that your muscles are getting that relaxed is going to reduce inflammation. If they're not tight, they're really loose, then there's less strain on your joints, and less strain on your joints is going to allow inflammatory molecules to pass more freely to where they need to go. So yeah, it improves circulation in that way as well. Yeah, did I answer all the questions there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And then you talked about some of the other services you had, massage therapy, and you said something about, was it red light therapy?
Yeah, we just got red light therapy. That's what this thing is. And it's, it's recently been shown to do all kinds of stuff. Wound repair, increase testosterone, decrease wrinkles and acne. It stimulates mitochondria to produce more ATP more efficiently, so it increases energy. It's also been shown to decrease the effects of age-related macular degeneration. So, like myself, I got told this past year that I was probably going to need bifocals the next time I got glasses, and so hopefully it helps to reverse some of that. I don't want to wear bifocals. I don't know about you, but it makes me feel old. So, but also it's been shown to reduce inflammation, and if you are more capable of producing ATP, and your metabolism's increasing, that's always going to help lead to weight loss as well. So, some people will market it as, it also helps with weight loss. And that's true, but it helps with weight loss through these other mechanisms.
What is that ATP that you're referencing?
Adenosine triphosphate. ATP is one of the most widespread energy molecules in the body.
Okay.
So it's what a lot of things use a lot of cells use it to conduct activities, both inter and intracellularly.
Okay.
So, it's kind of the energy currency, I guess you would say, of your body.
Yeah.
And it's produced in the mitochondria through glycolysis. Breaks down glucose molecules and turns them into ATP eventually. So,
And then you've got the sauna. Is that all the services there now that we've listed?
Sauna and cold plunge, yeah.
Oh yeah, the cold plunge.
Yeah. The sauna is great. There's so much research on sauna use and it reducing cardiovascular disease, diseases associated with like brain illness over time. So like Alzheimer's and dementia. It also, it decreases all-cause mortality, meaning that you're less likely to die from anything that you do or anything that happens to you. You're less likely to die. And some of those rates are up to like 50%, So if you use the sauna, roughly 50 minutes a week, I think it was, you are 50% less likely to have a heart attack or dementia or Alzheimer's or all these other things. It speeds up metabolism. It increases the heat shock proteins in your body, which are these molecular chaperones. They basically help proteins to fold correctly, and if they're proteins that are misshapen, they'll like take them and recycle them and stuff like that. So it also it increases dynorphin in the brain, which is a molecule that makes you want to get out. It's like anytime you're feeling like restless because you're like, oh, this sucks. I need to get out of here. That's because your brain's flooded with dynorphin. The sauna does that, even though it's also very relaxing and feels great. But it increases dynorphin. Dynorphin binds to the mu-opioid receptor in the brain, which is what endorphins bind to. And when dynorphin binds to that, it makes it more sensitive, or it generates a higher affinity for endorphins. So after sauna use, your ability to feel good is increased tremendously. I've read a few things about people with depressive disorders having a complete remission of symptoms for up to 6 weeks after a single sauna session, just because it's allowing their receptors in their brain to actually feel endorphins, which make you feel good.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So it's one of my favorite things we have here. So yeah.
And then with the cold plunge, his name is escaping me right now, but
Wim Hof?
Yes.
Yeah.
You knew where I was going with that.
Yeah.
I have been watching a lot of his videos, with his breath work and things like that, but he talks a lot about, the benefits of cold plunges. I know it may not be, I bet a lot of people are interested in the sauna, not so much maybe the cold plunge.
Right,
but, go through some of the benefits of that, because I know, he really heralds it as something good for us. Yeah.
So both the sauna and the cold plunge will reduce inflammation. The cold plunge does it in a completely different way. Another thing the cold plunge does is it increases your what's known as brown fat, which is mitochondrial rich adipose tissue. So there's a lot of it around your heart and in your neck. And the more brown fat you have, the higher your metabolism is. And I believe the way that it works is because these fat cells have so much mitochondria in them, that whenever your body gets cold, or whenever you experience that sensation in your brain says, oh, it's cold, you get that shiver response, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's one way to increase your temperature, your core temperature. But those brown fat cells, because they have so many mitochondria, they start really powering up and really creating a whole lot of ATP and energy. And what that does, because it's so close to your heart and your neck, is it's heating up the blood, or it's getting that area warm. And that blood is going to be warmer passing to your brain, passing to the rest of your body as well. So it's kind of neat that it has that effect. Another thing is the cold plunge will increase your dopamine levels after you get out of it, to a state that, they say it's as elevated as what cocaine raises your dopamine levels to. But instead of it being in a quick burst, it takes your baseline, moves your baseline up that high. So people, they feel amazing when they get out. Some people get addicted to the cold plunge. So they need that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
But it's a healthy way to get it. It's like your body rebounds from this experience of, dynorphin again, because you get in there and your brain's saying, hey, you got to get out of here. Get out. Yeah. But it's, the mental clarity and stuff that comes from cold plunging too. You feel really alive when you get out of there.
Yeah.
It's nice. And it does, it's been another thing with the brown fat is because it uses a lot more energy. It's been shown to improve weight loss as well. Anytime you raise your metabolism, you're going to burn more calories. As long as you're not consuming more calories to compensate, you're going to start losing weight. So sauna does that too. The sauna, however, it does it from a stance of it increases your heart rate to about the same rate as moderate cardiovascular exercise. So if you're in there 20 minutes and your heart rate's at, 120, 130, it's almost like running or jogging for, 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. So people who are handicapped that can't actually jog or do cardiovascular workouts can get similar benefits from the sauna on the heart. Now, they're not going to get the muscular benefits that you would get elsewhere, if you're running or swimming, but your heart's going to get the benefits because it's still got to pump all that blood, it's still getting a workout, And there's been times I've been in there and I've had my heart rate up to 145, which is like, that's like an intense, that's like, I get up there when I'm mountain biking sometimes, 145, 150. So to be sitting there, getting that. And if you do that after cardiovascular training, it's got like a 4 or 5-fold impact on developing your stamina compared to if you just were doing cardiovascular exercise.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's biohacking.
Yeah.
We got all these tools now that we could advance our capabilities, and human optimization.
Mm-hmm. Well, go through some of the pricing of your services that you got.
So we have the floats we have 60-minute and 90-minute floats. 60-minute floats are $70. 90 minutes are $90. The Finnish sauna and cold plunge, it's $50 to use that room for an hour. We keep the Finnish sauna at about $185. We currently also have an infrared sauna, but we're about to phase that out, make room for the red light therapy and a sound bed. And then massages are $90 for 60 minutes, $130 for 90 minutes. Our massage therapists are trained in deep tissue and Swedish and Thai and all kinds of stuff. They're therapeutic massages if you're looking for therapeutic massage. And then the cold plunge by itself is just $20 for 20 minute. And then all of these therapies, if you're on our membership, we have what's known as the Theta Fit membership, and it's $70 a month. The $70 goes onto your account to use as a credit towards any of the services you want at half price, except for the massage. You only get $10 off the massages. But so for that $70, you could get 2 60-minute floats or, almost 3 saunas. Math. Yeah. Yeah. Add $5, you'll get 3 Finnish saunas, And, you don't have to only spend $70 a month. As long as you're a member, you can come in here every day and use the sauna for half price or use a float for half price, whatever. It's just our hope that people will make this a lifestyle and not just like a bucket list thing or something they just do every now and then when they're feeling really bad, because the benefits really come from consistency, and I've seen that in my life.
Yeah.
Tremendously. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That really goes with anything, especially, with your mental health, because it's so easy to backslide because, like we said earlier, suffering is inevitable. I mean, that's what it is to be human. And it's kind of what you do with that suffering that really makes your life what it's going to, how it's going to turn out, because, like we were talking before we started recording, like I was talking about, that negative self-talk, that stuff, you can quiet it down, but it's always going to be there. So yeah, talking about making it a lifestyle. What are some of the other tips that you outside of, doing the floats and things like we're talking here, what are some other things that you've incorporated in your life as we wrap this up that you found helpful?
I'm a huge advocate of exercise. Humans aren't necessarily meant to be sedentary. We evolved from hunter-gatherers who always had to either walk or run for their food. They were active all day. But then also balancing that, I'm a huge believer in balance. So, I exercise, I do jujitsu, which, martial arts I think are very important. And I don't write as much anymore, but I used to write quite a bit. I meditate consistently. I eat mostly healthy, but I also love cake. And I love a good donut, and I just don't take myself so seriously that I can't allow myself to enjoy some of those things in life,
Yeah.
And I try to be mindful of what you're putting in your body from an observational standpoint. If you consistently watch horrible things, your view of the world is going to be horrible. Seek out positive things to watch and positive people to listen to. I read a lot. I've read a lot of self-help books my entire life, and a lot of spiritual books, and they've given me a lot of insight and wisdom, and I think sometimes we try to be too safe about things, and we don't take some healthy risk, and so travel. A lot of people they don't travel even though they want to. And I would say travel is one of the most important educational tools we have at our disposal, especially in this century. Seeing the way other people live their lives, maybe their lives are way harder than ours, and maybe they're happier, and maybe it gives you that perspective of God, why am I dwelling on all this stuff? Having that understanding, knowing that a man with $5 million can be just as sad as a man with $5. And a man with $5 can be even more happy than a man with $5 million.
Yeah.
We live in a society where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others because of social media and the fact that attention has become the commodity. And if you're not getting a lot of attention, maybe there's this feeling that you're not as important as these people who are. And I just try to invite people to spend some time in solitude and really think about all that.
Yeah.
Get out in nature and, and breathe with the wind and, and watch ants, and all that simple stuff, that's what we did when we were kids, so It's like, why did we stop? That seemed to be working. I was a pretty happy kid, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I just rambled a bunch of stuff right there, but it's, you know.
No, it's all true. I loved it. Real quick, you talked about staying consistent. I find that's something that's sometimes hard. You know, I've went on stretches of, you know, talking about exercise, for example. Like I remember one year I really celebrated at the end of the year because I went, I set up a schedule for myself to follow. And I think I missed on my scheduled days to work out maybe 3 days. And it was like due to sickness or whatever.
Right.
And of course, you know, something happens in life, you know, your schedule gets disrupted and then it's hard to kind of get back to that.
Yeah.
How do you maintain consistency?
I don't. Yeah, I'm not a very consistent person. I'd say my trajectory is pretty consistent in that I'm always working to better myself, but routine has never been my strong suit. And I tend to go through phases. Like sometimes I will work out 6 days a week and sometimes I'll work out 2, you know, for a while. And I've learned over the years to just like not place so much importance on that. You know, I've got a lot of different passions and a lot of different, you know, curiosities. So for me particularly, like to just kind of dance through life, dabbling here and there when it seems fit, seems to work out for me.
Yeah, it definitely seems so.
Yeah,
For those who can't see, you're a pretty fit guy.
Oh yeah, thank you. Well, jujitsu will do that for sure. You ever done jujitsu?
No, I did taekwondo for quite a while.
Nice.
But,
I used to do taekwondo as well. Yeah. I love taekwondo. Yeah, man, if you're ever interested, I go to a place where everybody's real cool and, you know, it's all about the community and it's called Kokoro downtown.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd love to have you come in and just try it out.
Yeah.
It's great. And it's, you know, it'll build your confidence. It's the greatest workout I've ever done, honestly. Like cardiovascularly, like it's even more effective, I'd say, than the mountain biking I've done, which, you know, I thought that was the pinnacle of cardiovascular,
Right,
but
yeah.
then I started rolling and I was like, wow, this is even more intense than that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's great. And it's really bonding. You know, you connect with other guys and it's all about like helping each other get better and, you know, stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff that people learn through this might be almost more of an educational episode than it might be. But yeah, I appreciate it. And, you know, everybody listening, I hope this helps and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Awesome, man. Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate you coming in.